US will have increased corn and soybean output, and we are going to explain the impact for the producer right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, the USDA has increased the U.S. output for both corn and soybeans for some millions of bushels, I should say, and the market has not reacted well on Friday.
Well, this we had the big impact from Thursday's updates and that, and actually a minor recovery here on the soybeans today. Corn and wheat continue to be sluggish and defensive, but we did have a 4 or 5 cent recovery here after the pretty, I think, significantly negative reaction here, considering the fact that the latest production numbers, oh yes, they're higher. There's no doubt about that. But in reality here, on the soybean side, which has really been the one that has really caught most traders' eyes, and also just the fact that the South American crop is off to somewhat lackluster or disappointing progress at this point, and that increasing the U.S. Production by 25 million. Wow, that isn't really all that much, really speaking. When we're talking about a carryover stock that's 220 million from the USDA's last month, and so and the way the USDA did not make any changes in their demand numbers, I think that's also a little bit shaky, but not surprising this time of year from the standpoint of they left crush at 2.3 and they left their exports at 1.755. So the 25 million that they found, and it was scattered around. But interestingly enough, the major states, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, didn't change their yield numbers. We had Wisconsin going up, Tennessee going up, a couple other ones like that, enough to create a number that was, higher than the previous month. I was looking for that same 20 million down. I was anticipating maybe closer to 200 million carryover, but it didn't happen. But I'm not saying that, oh God, this thing's terrible and all that kind of stuff from there. Now, corn, you might want to talk that one up a little bit more excitingly from the standpoint that the USDA went on. They weren't. The trade wasn't looking for any average estimate. I think was up 2 or 3 tenths of a bushel. I was looking for 8 tenths down, but it came in 1.9 bushels higher at 174.9. And the interesting trend on this situation, when you go back over history, and that a lot of times when September and October is down, November does pop up a little bit, but also when there has been some shaky weather, and we definitely have had some of that, the final number sometimes goes down. So I wouldn't guarantee this 174.9 is going to be our final production number here. But, we're going to deal with that, but in the short term, that higher bushels, and we did end up having some increases in Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska was down, Wisconsin was up. Another one of these kind of in between states, if you will be. It's important for the dairy people in Wisconsin, but it really is from the standpoint of the total bushels out there. The increase of 170 million up to 15.235 it is interesting, but I wouldn't consider the thing devastating because we've already had a big crop already here. It wasn't something surprisingly big. The big news that came out of the USDA's number, by the way, on Thursday was the fact that they also sensed that these pretty competitive and pretty interestingly uh, uh, current prices out here under $5 in most cases in the cash, and we haven't had that kind of price here probably in over uh, probably 3 years or so. Basically, we started to pick up the prices here even before the uh, Russian invasion of Ukraine. And then we've had some weather problems last year and things of that nature. So overall, though, a 15 billion bushel crop always provides a lot of supply out there. But what did the USDA do? They went ahead and increased their usage factors. They end up increasing feed usage by 50. They increased exports by 50. They increased ethanol and also food usage and that by 25. So all of a sudden we utilized a whole bunch of that 170 million. And our carryover stock that the USDA came up with here after the expanded production, oh wow, it went up a whole 45 million. That really isn't a huge adjustment in our carryover supply at this point. And if this thing does maybe find a few less bushels here in the January financial report, final, I should say, not financial, final production report, then I'd have to say that, this thing is maybe tighten up a little bit. The one thing is a little disappointing. I kind of thought maybe somehow or other we'd have a carryover stock slightly below 2 billion. Psychologically, a 2 billion carryover stock is not really exciting for a corn crop. So that's really actually been the surprise feature to me is the seasonal that tends to pick up here from mid to late October as we're kind of winding down our corn crop and harvest and things like that, and also soybeans, in that we tend to have a little bit of strength. We had one little burst of enthusiasm there above $5 in December, late in October, but we haven't been able to continue that because it looks like that the commercial channels have got what they think they need. Now it's going to be interesting how this thing kind of works itself out. Wheat, in the other side of the coin, they increased the wheat carryover stock surprisingly by the fact that they increased imports by 10 million and they cut feed usage by 4. That's kind of an interesting twist. That's not really telling you that the U.S. supplies or the demand has made any significantly different scenario at this point. So, and looking at the world situation on wheat, the USDA increased Russia's crop again here on the world numbers this time around, and that was.
And there was also the Russian changes of their export tax.
Yes, yeah, that's a factor, and the interesting thing about the Russian situation at this point, they really have been controlling this world wheat price basically because they really need I think the cash into their coffers here to continue off their military action in Ukraine, and so I think that's been the real bugaboo about wheat. But you look at the world statistics on wheat, we should be a lot more snappy as they decreased India's output, they sliced Argentina's output. Australia has already been knocked down. So the Southern Hemisphere's world wheat supplies are going to be somewhat subject, except we had this interesting USDA 5 million increase from 85 to 90 million metric tons.
Yes, and on the other hand, for soybeans, the Brazilian state agency, Connect, they have increase their estimates for output, but that doesn't sound right at this point.
you you have the same kind of sarcasm or jaundice eye as many people do about the Brazilian soybean crop uh, and its expectation. By the way, if you looked at that increase, it was less than a
Well,
million.
it might be too early to tell, but still, we are not having great weather in Brazil,
Oh,
so.
no way. And the interesting twist about it was an increase by less than a half a million or 3/4 of a million metric tons. But we didn't you also see a couple people from South America, and particularly Brazil. They had one fella, they had it down to 155.8, I think it was. That's versus the 163 that the USDA has and the 162 points, whatever it is, for CONAB. And that, hey, we both kind of understand it's been a really tough season down there. They've had too much rain in Paraná and Rio Grande, and it's been very spotty. Now, we did have one excellent rain here about a week or 10 days ago up in Mato Grosso, but then guess what? We haven't had a rain since. And so it's hard to get this planting in, because the twist of it is I understand that they're going to continue to plant beans up there. I mean, we've discussed this in the past, that the impact of this whole weather conditions in Brazil is really putting a lot more heat on their second crop corn. Will they plant it? Won't they plant it? Particularly if the U.S. corn prices here continue to kind of wallow along at this same general price point here of just say 450 to $5. That doesn't get them really excited either about planting their second crop corn. That's really going to be a feature out in front of us. It might help us, along with the fact I think by the time we get to next February and March, we're going to be talking about 3-4 million less planted acres. And all of a sudden they're going to say, wow, what happened here? The world's not awash with corn. But mindset right now is awash of corn. There's no doubt about that.
Now, getting back to the U.S. crop, many states have harvested more than 90% of corn crop. But what do you think it's ahead of us with problems maybe foreseen for the Mississippi River?
That's an issue that's really this is a time of year when they love to get a lot of stuff pushed down the Mississippi. What happens is that once you get uh, 50, 75 miles north of St. Louis, you really have an issue of of this Mississippi River freezing up in the wintertime because of the constant temperatures in the below freezing in that. But that's the real reason why we tend to have had a pretty strong seasonal at this point in time of year to get that to happen. But it looks like the other twist of this whole thing is that if we get it down to Mississippi and get it to New Orleans, which is where our major exporting facilities are at, and that if you're going to Asia, and a lot of corn is going to Asia over the years, and China's been a part of that. Now, there's still indications that China is not as excited about corn purchases because they have a lot of the wheat issues from last summer that's created maybe some additional feed wheat over there. But the other twist of it, and another report about how low the Panama Canal is. So it looks like that the U.S. Corn exports will possibly, and even some soybeans will be going off the Pacific Northwest, and they can rail out to Portland and Seattle and those areas to ship it to the Pacific Rim countries at this point. So that's an interesting twist. I think it's going to happen. And we haven't even talked about the significant purchase of beans this week, which I think is really interesting impact there. They've been pretty coy, the Chinese have, about their purchases of proteins and that. But I think what's happened in their mindset is that we got these issues going on with the U.S. transportation. We also have the weather being very erratic in Brazil and that. And I think they decided that they needed to get some coverage, which they hadn't really delved in it. They've been utilizing Brazil's soybeans that they've had up to this point from last year's big crop, but now they hadn't really purchased Brazilian crop or even U.S. crop, and now all of a sudden they had virtually a 3 million metric ton purchase this last week, and I think that's going to start to get things excited as we get into the next 10 days, the next 2 to 3 weeks here before the December 1st situation. We get some more purchases from China pop into this thing, then all of a sudden the beans I think still have another potential push at the $14 mark. Do I think it's going to be a wild advancing market? We're going to have a lot more problems in the Brazilian growing season, which is not impossible. I think a lot of people, it's going to be an El Nino year and everything's going to be fine in South America. It sure hasn't got off to a very good start, as we both know. As this isn't the typical El Nino year that gives everybody an excellent growing season in Argentina and Brazil.
It sounds like it's a perfect storm for U.S. soybeans right now.
Oh, from the standpoint of interest in the U.S., I think there really is going to be a lot more interest here. From the standpoint that this thing could continue to build for issues in South America, because really, as it still goes on here in the world, there's the U.S. soybeans and there's Brazilian, Argentine soybeans. Argentina at this point still has very minimal supplies from last year. And they're not going to have their crop really available here until spring of 2024. And so we're in a situation where the world is going to be looking at us really, because the fact even the Brazilians at this point have shipped a lot of their beans from last year. They had a great crop, but right now the world's going to be looking at, I think, the protein demand. I guess I'm kind of wondering if we can get more enthusiasm about $14. Maybe we can, but I think it's going to be dictated because of what happens in the Brazil's weather conditions here over the next couple of months as they go into their growing season. Because right now they still got to get some plantings done, and this is unusual to have as much left to be planted at this time.
All right, I think we covered everything. Thank you.
Lots of things. We had a big report, and we had lots of different angles on this thing, to say the least. But I kind of feel like we have a little bit more enthusiasm potential. Now, do I think it's going to go crazy? No. If we get rallies in the corn, 15 to 25 cents, you probably need to make some marketings there. And beans, I think we got a chance at least to get back to the recent highs here at $13.80 to $14. This is January. Let's see if we can get there, though, over the next few weeks, and have a great weekend.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.